Hello everybody and welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, bringing you a brand new review, and this is for the new Transformers film, Transformers Rise of the Beast, which is now out in cinemas around the world, and I'm here to give my thoughts on the film. It's just going to be one review for this one. It's directed by Stephen Caple Jr., starring Dominic Fishback and Anthony Ramos, and it's the 7th film in the Transformers live-action series, whatever we want to call it. 6th film with the main Transformer titles, the first film in apparently a new trilogy. Is it a reboot? It's not really clear, and I'm going to get into that. But before I give my thoughts on the film and that sort of stuff, please do comment your thoughts on the Transformers films. If you've seen Rise of the Beast, let me know your thoughts. If you're a fan of the others, if you're not, what you enjoy, what you don't. Maybe the animated series, maybe you grew up with it, that kind of stuff. I do want to hear your thoughts, so please do get involved and comment along. We'll reply to any comments that do come through. And if you like this video, like this review, please do consider hitting the subscribe button. There's a lot more new releases coming on the way. We're into blockbuster season now. There's almost a film out every single week. Flash is next week. Last week was Spider-Verse. There's so much happening, so many films out. It's a great time to be a fan of going to the cinema, I guess we can say. A lot of other TV stuff which has been also going well. And if you want to follow our social media platforms, you can grab us on Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy, with a link to Redbubble in that description below. But as I said, I'm here to review Transformers, and I'm going to kickstart giving my thoughts on the Transformers films, actually. A lot of people have been rewatching them in the lead up to this. I absolutely would have done the same had I not been watching the Mission Impossible films. I actually really wanted to watch do we call it the original trilogy now? I don't know. That sounds terrifying as a concept because, you know, the third one came out 12 years ago and it was a massive part of me growing up, and kind of my thoughts on those films as well. I loved the Transformers films. The first three, I mean mainly 1 and 3 if I'm being honest, but they were a massive part of my teenage years. When we were at school, every time one came out, it was a massive event film. Everyone was going to the cinema to watch Transformers. We'd go in our social groups, and it was really interesting. And I think kind of backpedaling even further back from that, that was my introduction to Transformers. I hadn't seen the cartoons, hadn't played any of the older games, I didn't have any toys. My introduction was sitting there for the cinema for the first time in 2007. Ironically, the first ever time I went to the cinema by myself, and I was aged 11, which is amazing to see that people hate that kind of thing now, which really fascinated me when I discovered that over the last couple of years. But, you know, I absolutely loved it. And again, you know, teenage lads, that age group, obviously there's a lot of things people dislike about this films, things we wouldn't have known at the age of being like 11, 12, you know, some of the racism, stuff like that, which is understandable. The introduction to Michael Bay for me as a fan of film, something growing into film. And I've always had a soft spot for him as director, and Pushing Ambulance again, which is a really good film from last year. But fast forwarding to today with the amazing film Bumblebee. Absolutely loved that, starring John Cena and Haley Steinfeld. Film which I didn't know being any good, wasn't sure about it. Like Spider-Verse, came out December 2018. Funny we got both sequels per se in the matter of a week. And heading into this one, I felt nothing. We spoke about it in a box office preview video. I don't think this is a film that's been marketed well. I don't think this is a film audiences are going to flock to go and see. I think this is actually a really tricky sell. Not bringing back Transformers now, but COVID-wise, this was one of the big delays from last year. This was due out last year, delayed another year. And a lot of those films that had the continuous delays are ones that have struggled, I think, to get people invested, to get people on board. And now it feels like, okay, it's come out. And that kind of echoes my thoughts on the film, and it's very strange to review this. I don't know how long this review is going to be. It's not going to be long. I'm not going to do spoilers if I'm being completely honest, but I'm in a weird place with this where there's things I certainly liked about this and there's things I didn't, and some of those issues might actually be down to myself growing up with those Michael Bay films. And I keep mentioning the Michael Bay films. I don't care for the 4th or 5th one. Maybe I was growing out of them that age, probably a fairer assumption. I think the quality dropped. Some people laugh saying the quality was always the same. But at least for me, I always felt something with those first 3 films. So, give my thoughts on this. As we'll often do with the Transformers films, let's talk to humans. Anthony Ramos came on board. Thought it's great in this film. Dominic Fishback as well, I thought was great in this film. And I'll tell you one thing that lets this down, that lets those duo down. I don't think the script did a great job at catering to them. I think the time place of this being set in the 90s was very pointless indeed. To the Wonder Woman 84 level of pointless, that they've picked a decade, they said it's set there, but they don't actually utilise it outside of a couple of references here or there. Some films do it really well. Bumblebee was really well done for the setting it was took place in. It felt like this just feels like it's been made today. yes, in New York they put the Twin Towers back in the skyline. Yes, it's clearly meant to be set before then, but at no point, except for the Porsche designs, it doesn't ever feel like it's from the 90s. And that's something that was a kind of weird thing for me tangling with throughout this. It's not important per se to the story, but to make this big deal of this being set in the 90s, my questions at least then rise to, is this a prequel? Is this a reboot? Is this a clean reboot? What is going on here? And that's one of the big things this film doesn't answer. Now, whether they've said stuff outside of this, whether they've said stuff at CinemaCon or Comic-Con or whatever, it is not clear where this film stands within the Transformers universe, whatever we want to call this now, because Bumblebee made crystal clear sense of what that was trying to be, and that film is referenced in this, so at least I know this is in the same continuity as Bumblebee, but the rest of it I'm completely floored by. Where is it meant to be? Where is it following? And I just think it hit the point where let's get some certain 90s songs in there, let's get references, let's get Jordans, let's get all this kind of stuff just to tell you that we're in the 90s. Let's get loads of references to Mario, things like that. And for me, I struggle with that. It just felt like it was doing that for the sake of doing that. It didn't actually add to the experience of watching the film. It didn't feel like a trip down memory lane. It just felt like, okay, this is where it's meant to be. And I think that discredits the actors who actually do really good performances with this. It's tough to compare it to other Transformers actors because the scripts have been very different throughout. Bumblebee, I would still say, is the best of those, the best character piece, character-driven one. Haley Steinfeld's performance is amazing in there. But these two, I think they were dealt a bad hand by the production. I thought they were both great. Certain character things I dislike that happen moving forward. I'm not going to do spoilers. If you've seen the film, you'll probably know what I mean. Certainly one of the characters and what their role ends up being towards the end with a certain, I'm just going to call it a Halo suit. But I think the chemistry's there between them. I think they delivered that. The production's there. It feels earned, their performances. I don't feel anything towards this film. I'm very indifferent to it. I'm very, don't say negative. I'm just very neutral that I sort of watched it. The film happened. The film finished. I went home. I'm home now. I'm recording this review. I can't sit here and say I loved A, B, C, D, E, F about it. I can't sit here and say I hate all of this about it. It's a very weird stance that I'm in with approaching this film, so this might actually be quite a lot short now I've said that out loud. And kind of segueing with that, I want to actually talk about the Transformers side of things as well. Rise of the Beast is the name of the title. For all intents and purposes, this might as well just function as a reboot. It's once again, Transformers got to chase a MacGuffin, the MacGuffin's the story. We've got to stop Unicron coming to Earth, which yes happened in Transformers 3. So is this a reboot? Again, I shouldn't pay too much attention to wanting to know if it's a reboot or not. But I didn't feel anything towards the characters. And what this film does in particular, we bring about Optimus Prime, who, by all means, is a legend of cinema, TV, whatever. One of the most iconic characters in all of media. I think that's probably a much fairer title. And it feels sort of nothing. There's this big triumphant to be point entrance of him. They're trying to build a character arc with him, but it's Optimus Prime. We don't need that. The film doesn't need that. And I think when you're 7 films into a series of doing these in live action, including Bumblebee, how much more can we take of him, just being this presence? And I know that, of course, in Bumblebee, he was in there in a very different use of that. And I think that worked perfectly. The concept of Bumblebee is how can this one character exist within the storytelling? And I think Bumblebee delivers with that. Whereas this film, I think, fails in trying to make it a Transformers thing, trying to make it, let's have the Autobots together. We'll make sure we have no Decepticons. I respect them for going there as a villain. Then my question comes, if this is a reboot, why aren't the Decepticons there? What are they trying to do? What are they going to build up towards? So I'm left very indifferent. And by all means, having Unicron as the villain, I can't sit here and read Transformers law. I know that a lot of people hated how it was handled in the 3rd Transformers film. It's a giant Transformer that eats planets. It's pretty hard to, if I'm being honest, give that character arc. Certainly in this one, I like what they do with the villains. I like the character Scourge, which was voiced by Peter Dinklage, which didn't realise laughter. And what the Transformer films have done very well is have cool villains. The Decepticons have always been cool. I don't know if that's the purpose of them to be cooler than the heroes, or maybe I'm just weird in a strange sort of way. But in this one, I enjoy seeing the villains in this, seeing, yes, the plan is to end the world. Yes, it's a CGI monstrosity as the film progresses. Much more akin to the Michael Bay ones in terms of how that CG goes, in terms of how the action is done. The character designs are slightly tailored more to Bumblebee, where you can see definitively which character is which, but at the end of the day, it's giant robots fighting giant robots. It's quite easy to figure that out for yourself. It's how I always felt watching the others when I was younger. And I just don't think it's as interesting as it's been done in the past. It never feels like there's stakes. never feels like you can't predict what's going to happen next. Pete Davidson voices a Porsche, which is the strangest thing. It's not the strangest Pete Davidson role I've seen this year, if I'm being completely honest. Fast 10 still got that answer. But I just wasn't sure what I thought of the voice cast. Did I sit here yearning for I remember Jazz, remember Ironhide, remember all these from the other films. I don't want to keep going back to them, but at every point of me watching this film today, I just sat there thinking, shall I just go home after this and put the Michael Bay Transformer films on? Because I kind of want to. I kind of want to revisit them. Because my issue with this, and it's not necessarily the direction per se, I'm definitely not a budget thing. It feels like it's trying to be more like the Michael Bay films, but then actively distancing itself from those Michael Bay films. Not in the sense of references, but in the sense of production value, production design. It's like, we need to have a big robot battle thing, but we'll try not to make it too much like the Michael Bay one. And then in turn, it just looks like a worse version of that. Whereas Bumblebee, on the other hand, as a definitive story, was a really, really good story, a great film. And you could argue the best Transformers film of all of them, which I think a lot of people would agree with. But for this one, I just felt like there's something missing. Like, it's trying to blend the two. It wants the heart of the Bumblebee film, but then it's trying to get the action that was there before. And let's be honest, guys, if you like Michael Bay, you know what the Bayhem is. You know what he's about as director. You know what he brings. Audiences coming with him. Audiences going to come to this film? I don't know. And I actually think the action's a struggle with this. We got a beautiful shot in the trailer, a really long take action sequence, and that's in the film, and that's the longest one take action sequence. And I did sort of sit there at that point thinking, you know what? It's been however many films. Not do an animated film. Do some photorealism Lion King thing. Let's do a Transformers film, which is just now the Transformers on Cybertron. Something like that, because, again, I really enjoyed the performances from Anthony Ramos, Donald Fishbeck. But I just think this film, it's not too much of the Humans font, which I'll give that credit for. But I'm just sat there saying this doesn't need to be set on Earth anymore. You're bringing in people for the sake of bringing in people. Yes, audiences can identify with them, especially younger viewers, as I did when I was younger with Sam Witwicky, stuff like that. But it just hit a point where people would be more interested. This was done in a different way, shot in a different style. Once again, Bumblebee was an exception to that. Was Bumblebee, the glue that's kept this together, that film coming out made them think we can do another one of these? Because I'm sat here thinking this is the first in a new trilogy. I don't want to know what this trilogy is going to be. Yes, everyone, if you've seen it, you will know that final shot of the film and what that implies moving forwards for Hasbro more than Transformers, which I just shrugged my shoulders and thought, okay, great for them, not for me. I don't care. I think the Americans will take more to that with it being an iconic American IP, and it's not Fast and Furious or Jurassic Park for those that are going to quickly think, oh, I wonder what they've teased. But it's just something where I feel nothing towards this, and it's a shame. I had such a brilliant experience last week watching Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I've seen some good films recently. I've been watching some older films recently, and this one was just a strange experience. I saw it in IMAX. I always watch the Transformers films in IMAX. The third one is the second film I ever saw in IMAX, actually, and it always looked amazing. It felt like the big screen experience that you have to be there to see it. I didn't get that with this one, I don't know why it was in 3D. The 3D wasn't atrocious. At the same time, it was clearly added on after. Again, I don't mind that. I'll see it if I have to. But I'm also at a point where I'm thinking, what's the point of this? And yeah, it's very lukewarm, very, very quiet from me as normal, very negative, I guess we can say. Because I don't think it's a terrible film, but I don't think it's a good film. It's a film that I've seen that exists. I'll probably never see it again in my lifetime. And as I said, I want to go back and watch those first few films, and I'm going to politely round up my review with that. It's a weird one for me. I don't know what to think. Am I too fresh out of watching it? If I gather my thoughts fully, I don't know. I can't even pinpoint new favourite scenes. I can't even talk about stuff I enjoyed. Even the primals, the animal things, if people are curious about them, all over the marketing, basically not used. I thought they were a waste of time for me, to be completely honest with you. I know that's going to upset Transformers from somewhere, but for me, I don't know. I'd much rather go watch Fast 10 again than watch this film. And I really think it's time for the... unless it's, a Bumblebee follow-up with the same creative team, it's time for me to call this series a day and be done with it. So that's my awful review for Transformers Rise of the Beasts. Terrible title as well. Sorry, now I've just said that out loud again. There's no beast to be rising in this film. I don't know. It's strange. I feel weird. Comment your thoughts. I'm going to round out. I'm going to go get some sleep because this film is one I want to forget. And with that being said, I'm going to watch some good films over the weekend to make up that teasing our Mission Impossible series, of course, which is streaming every Tuesday. So that's going to round out our review. Thank you all for watching. I hope this didn't upset you too much. And in the meantime, take care. We'll see you on the next one.